confirmation line at the bottom of the enforcement order read, Sector designation, terminal. Authorization, full. Witness required. That last requirement was why they brought me. I am Velith Orun. I have served the archive of final designations for 61 years. In that time I have witnessed the formal erasure of 11 species. 6 by tribunal order, 3 by their own collapse, 2 by what the records call natural attrition, which is a phrase the archive uses when it cannot bring itself to write the truth. I have stood in this vault and filed the confirmation of each ending. My function is not to judge. My function is to watch, to record, and to sign the final line. The tribunal does not need my approval. It only needs my signature as proof that a witness was present, that the thing was done in the light, before an open eye, and not in secret. The order for human space came down 14 months ago. I read it 3 times before I accepted it. Not because I doubted the tribunal's authority, I never have, but because the designation was unusual. The 11 species I had witnessed before were small things. Fragile. 2 of them had begged. 3 had not known we were coming. Human space was different. Human space had a border that the rest of the galaxy had spent generations not approaching, and the tribunal's order did not explain why the line had been drawn. Only that the humans had drawn it themselves, and that drawing lines was, the order noted, an act of territorial aggression that the compact could no longer accommodate. I signed the intake form. I packed my recording instruments. I boarded the enforcement fleet's command vessel, the Solen Varath, as the designated witness. Admiral Kair Hondas met me at the gangway. She was a small woman, blue-gray at the temples, the quiet manner of someone who has difficult work long enough that it no longer requires expression. She told me the fleet numbered 208 vessels. She told me the approach corridor had been mapped. She did not tell me she was afraid. I had been reading admirals for 6 decades, and I knew the set of her shoulders. We crossed into the outer boundary of human space on the 43rd day. The instruments registered it first. Not weapons, not signals. The long-range array began logging a pattern in the electromagnetic background, a kind of density, as though the space itself had been listening for a long time, and had recognized the sound of our drives. Kerhahandis looked at the reading for nearly a full minute without speaking. Then she asked her navigator how long until we reached optimal engagement distance. The navigator said, 4 hours. Hondas nodded and said nothing more. The second thing happened 2 hours later. Forward pickets, 12 fast scouts sent ahead to map the approach, began returning data, not distress signals, not weapons fire, telemetry, smooth and complete, every packet intact. But the images in the telemetry were wrong, and the wrongness was not the kind that comes from equipment failure. The images showed human installations along the approach corridor. Stations, platforms, construction in progress, lights burning in the dark, and between those installations, at intervals too regular to be accidental, there were gaps, open lanes, wide enough for a fleet, wide enough for our fleet specifically, if our fleet had maintained the formation we had used since leaving the compact's outer marker. They had been watching us since before we crossed the boundary. They had measured us. And they had left the door open. I remember standing at the forward observation glass while Kair Hondas ordered the fleet to hold position. I remember the silence on the bridge. The silence of fear. I have heard that silence, and it has a texture, a held-breath quality that you feel in your chest. This was different. This was the silence of people who had just understood something about themselves that they had not understood before, and who were not sure they could continue once they had understood it. The humans sent no communication, no warning, no demand. The open lanes simply waited. Kair Honda stood at the front of the bridge for a long time. Then she turned and looked at me. Not at her officers, at me. The witness I had no authority to give or withhold. I was there to record, not to decide. But she looked at me. The way people look at someone they hope will tell them what the thing they are seeing actually means. I did not tell her. I could not. I had spent 61 years watching endings, and what I was looking at was not an ending. I did not have a word for what it was. She gave the order to withdraw at the 19th hour of the hold. The fleet turned in segments, the great vessels rotating on their axes and pointing back the way we had come. Not one weapon had been warmed. Not one shielding array had been raised to combat the configuration. We had arrived at the door with the full authority of the compact behind us, and we had stood in the open lane the humans had left for us, and we had turned around. The return journey took 41 days. On the 39th day, Care Hondis came to my cabin. She sat across from me with her hands flat on the table, and she said, "You have to file the confirmation." I told her I was aware of my function, she said. "Then, you understand that the record needs to show either a completed designation or a formal withdrawal of the order. There is no third option in the archives codes." I told her I understood the codes. She asked me which I intended to file. I did not answer her. She left. I sat with the recording instrument in my hands, the same instrument I had carried for 61 years, the same one I had used to log 11 endings, and I thought about the open lanes, the measuring, the silence that had not been afraid. I thought about what it meant that they had watched us assemble, cross, approach, and they had not armed a single weapon either. They had simply opened the door and waited to see what we would do with it. We had done nothing. We had looked at what was waiting for us, and we had turned around. I have been back in this vault for 4 months now. The enforcement order is still open in the system. The confirmation line at the bottom is still blank. My superiors have sent 12 inquiries. I have acknowledged each one. I have not filed the confirmation, and I have not filed a formal withdrawal, because I do not know how to describe in the archives language what I witnessed. And I will not file a document that lies. There is a word in the old compact dialect for a thing that cannot be classified because it belongs to no existing category. The word is hereth. It was used, historically, for phenomena that the early surveyors encountered and could not name. Things that were not hostile and not neutral and not allied, but something else. Something that the language had not yet built a shelf for. The word fell out of use when the compact grew large enough that its members believed they had seen everything. I believe they were wrong about that. The enforcement order for human space remains open. I have been told that another fleet is being considered. I have been asked whether I will serve again as witness. I have not answered that inquiry either. I am 62 years old in this work. I have watched 11 endings. I know what an ending looks like, the shape of it, the texture of the silence that comes after. What I saw in human space was not that. What I saw was something that had been standing at the edge of the galaxy for a very long time, patient and still, holding the door open, waiting to find out what we were. I think it already knew. I will not speak of it again.